So one of the practices I talk about is deathbed memories. It is really the call to your soul to not miss today. So at the end of the day, very simply, you reflect upon the day. And what do you think today will offer your deathbed? Did I love today? Did I feel loved today? And whether it's a dog, it can be your job. But those moments throughout the day that really just grab your soul, that make you feel alive, you don't want to wait to the last day of life to really realize that life itself, just the mere fact that we're alive, is beautiful. Judgment Day isn't about all of the bad things you did your whole life. It's really about all the joy you missed. And that's a much deeper kind of thing, but being able to recall these joyful moments. But for me, it's made time go slower, made me feel like I'm more alive, living more of my life. And again, today's not preparation for some other day, brother. This is it. My name is Dr. Doug Brackmann. I am a licensed psychologist, author of the book Driven, a ridiculous amount of experience doing a whole lot of different things because I'm driven. I bounce from thing to thing to thing. And one of my rotations when I was getting trained and collecting hours for my licensure, I had the opportunity to do hospice. And I spent 2 years being trained by a couple of brilliant people, and one of which was a Zen teacher. And Frank Ornatansky, he founded Zen Hospice in 1972 in San Francisco, and somebody donated a house to him. And he was doing these profound deathbed experiences, helping people really transition. In the practice of presenting and meditation is an integral part of actually learning to be present. And a couple of things he said to me way back in the day. And he said a couple things, but one of which just stuck with me. And this was God. This was 1994. So literally 35 years ago. And he said that you only remember 2 things on your deathbed. And it's a little more context. In 1972, he had this house donated to him. And he was doing indigent, basically homeless people, and helping them transition. By 2002, when he retired, he had over 1,000 beds donated. Somebody donated a hospital to him. And so he had literally held 3,500 people's hands as they transitioned into death and was present to it all. So he really understood what presenting means. He says, whether you're a homeless person in basically a donated bed, or after 2002, he went into doing consulting for hospice, and he had helped people all over the country set up $1,000 a day, $5,000 a day, these beautiful homes to help rich people, basically. And he says, whether you're rich or poor, you only care about 2 things on your deathbed. And that's very simply, was I loved and did I love? And so I work in the driven world. I work with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and part of being driven, this drive that we have, part of our genetics, the shiny object syndrome, dopamine receptor number 4, is telling us that the grass is always greener over the next hill, and we can't wait to get there. And when we finally get there, then we can finally relax, believing that there's some other destination rather than right now that is going to be so much better than this. And if we use that as a context for actually how this present moment is, we poop on the moment. And so, yeah, but it's going to be better. That must mean that this is worse. And so there's chronic discontent. So this is really a video to kind of wake you up to this illusion that we're living as drivens, that somehow, someday, when I finally get there, then I can relax and enjoy my life. Very simply, the punchline is, this is your life. Today is it, man. You are living your life. Today is not preparation for some other day. And so the capacity to actually learn how to be present, and these practices that I teach all my drivens, all fundamentally come down to really experiencing the moment, and experiencing the moment for the fullest you can. So one of the practices I talk about is deathbed memories. It's kind of morbid, but it's really not. It is really the call to your soul to not miss today. And so one of the journaling practices that I invite you to do, it's a profound one and it's a sticky one, meaning that it's something that you'll think about all day. And if you do it the night before, it'll carry with you into the next morning. And it's something I've done on and off. So at the end of the day, very simply, you reflect upon the day. And what do you think today will offer your deathbed? Did I love today? Did I feel loved today? And whether it's a dog, it can be your job. It can be the country road you're driving down. It can be the city you're living in. It could be a meal. But those moments throughout the day that really just grab your soul, that make you feel alive, The other thing Frank Rudkansky said, the only truth, the truth that he came to settle upon after 40 years of working with death and dying, he said he knows the truth. Not the many truths, not one of the many truths, but literally the only truth that he could anchor in his life was that, and the eyes of the dying contain it. And so he would do these presentations from stage, and he'd have behind him these massive scrolling images of people, probably half black and white, old people, young people, medium people, mostly old, some color, and all of them looking dead into the camera. And so you had somebody looking dead into your soul, and at the end of this 45-minute presentation, he would say, all of these people that you've witnessed for the last 45 minutes while I'm telling these stories about growing this business and growing the hospice center, this is their last day alive. And it's like, whoa. And the eyes start to stick out. And you start to notice how clear the eyes are. And he says the eyes of the dying contain the truth. And the truth, the one and only truth he settled on. And he really punctuated this, that you don't want to wait to the last day of life to really realize that life itself, just the mere fact that we're alive, is beautiful. And emotion, to look at a tree, to look at your dog, to look at your kid, and really feel in your soul the beauty of just life itself. And I talk a lot about spirituality, I talk a lot about God, and I talk a lot about mysticism, being an INFJ driven like I am on that spiritual mystic path, but it's the different names for God. And life itself is one of my favorite names for God. So is presence. But when you're really present to life and you get to experience that life itself, it is a mystic spiritual experience. And so this practice, and you get yourself a little journal like this, doesn't have to be fancy. I've been doing it for 20, 25 years. And you just write the date and very simply reflect on the day. Where did you feel alive today? What did you notice alive today? And do it for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 30 days in. You start to appreciate the moments throughout the day that really help you just be alive and where you feel most alive. And so being driven in context with this is really an antidote for that horizoning gene that we all have. And we're waiting for some magical, mystical day to finally come to life. And this practice of deathbed memories and DBMs, it's profound. And you see the emotional response I have, because what it's doing is actually waking up the connection between this monkey mind, actually getting the monkey mind out of the way, and really letting the emotion come up out of the body. And so that's the core of everything I teach, to where I always joke about it. I teach people how to let themselves feel good. And these overwhelmingly good feelings are really hard to handle. As a species, we're wired for fear, we're wired for pain, we're wired for worry. And so this is an antidote to that, of really changing the base wiring. And I got other videos coming up about bandwidth, and this is one of those things that tease into that. You might want to check that one out after this, because what bandwidth is really about how the body works. And my doctoral dissertation was about self-sabotage. And so this operating system down below the nose is not looking for these wonderful experiences. It's not looking for these experiences where you feel most alive, most connected. What it's looking for is the familiar. And so lottery winners or whatever, when you have a big, wonderful experience in your life, you will automatically, subconsciously, preconsciously look for things to bring you back into this familiar place of feeling like crap for most of us, feeling like fear. And so it's really these deathbed memories is a way of expanding bandwidth. And it is this way of actually getting the most out of life. We got to learn how to feel good. Typically tell people this, but when you learn how to feel good, you also expand the bandwidth into allowing for negative feelings to come up too. And so it all is interconnected. So deathbed memories, very simply, all you got to do is get a journal, piece of paper, and write the date down. Just reflect back on the day. Was it a meal that you liked? Was it talking to your kids that morning? Was it the way a friend answered the phone? Even just the littlest thing to where you saw that, just kind of, whoa, that was cool. I was alive for that second. Don't worry about doing it right or wrong, and no one's going to read this. But the key is, here's the real key of it. When you think about them, notice what the body's doing. because this is where all the memories are. And this is what happens on our deathbed. These memories come flooding up. And something else I've said for a long time, and I don't even know where I heard it, but Judgment Day, when Judgment Day comes, Judgment Day isn't about all of the bad things you did your whole life. It's really about all the joy you missed. And that's a much deeper kind of thing. But being able to recall these joyful moments, that has a couple of interesting things for me. I'll let you find out for yourself. But for me, it's made time go slower, made me feel like I'm more alive, living more of my life. And again, today's not preparation for some other day, brother. This is it. I've helped a bunch of entrepreneurs, a bunch of misfits, people that don't fit in, people that have always felt different, find a home, how we are different. And as chapter 1 of Driven says, different is good. If you felt like you've always been out of the herd, like there's something different or abnormal about you, everybody's felt that a little bit, but Drivens really do feel different, and we are different. And so this incredible desire most of us as human species have to fit into the herd. We develop chameleon effect, meaning that we can, I call it situational identity in the assessment that I encourage you to take if you're questioning, am I driven? It's the way our brain works, and it allows us to jump from kind of situation to situation to situation, creating a different persona that feels like everyone, we fit right into the jocks or the punk rockers or the skateboarders or whatever, the brainiacs. We can jump from these different types of people, and yet it feels like there's no one on this planet that really knows the real me. And so that's one of the cornerstones of this Driven. And other videos, I've got a bunch of other videos coming and a bunch already in loop, explaining the neurobiology of this and the why of this. There's a lot of different videos about what to do about it. And so we're different. And I always go back to my second grade experience, third grade, all these kids sitting around me, memorizing spelling tests and memorizing crap out of the books. And I was in 1970s, and it was before the ADD, ADHD wave hit the world, when little Dougie was distractible and had a hard time sitting still. And I didn't understand why people thought this was a good idea. It didn't make sense to me why memorizing stuff would help me in the future at some point. And so I knew that my brain just worked different. And so I saw through the hypocrisy. And if you are driven, one of the character traits is that we hate hypocrisy. It's hard to both. We are the bothers of the world, but we're really important because not all people are created equal. And there's a lot of people in this society, most normals, that have a different brain structure than us. And there's another video that I'm creating called the executive function. They have a very big executive function. And that executive function is designed to tune out information, not tune into information. They can pay attention, but they only pay attention to the things that fit their inner dialogue or their narrative. And as Drivens, we're sitting on the outside, particularly in this time and place. If you're sitting there going, why can't everybody else in the world see this? The craziness that's going on, and people with one narrative throwing rocks at other narratives. And as Drivens, we see through narrative. We see the deeper, there's something bigger going on here. It's not about being your narrative versus my narrative. And so that's a really important character trait in rapidly changing environments. And so being a Christian and being very well versed in the Bible, I always noticed, and I don't know if you watched the Chosen series, but Chosen does a really good job at portraying the disciples as just normal people. They're just guys. And Simon Peter, he was eventually called Peter, but Simon on the show, he's portrayed perfectly as the Driven. He's running security. He's the Navy SEAL of the bunch. He's the tough guy. He also, the opening scene when he's introduced, he's out and about. He's a fisherman. He's entrepreneurial. He's working for himself. And Christ performs a miracle and says, go back out and throw the nets on that side of the boat, not on this side of the boat. And he goes out there and catches this huge load of fish. What does Simon do, good entrepreneur, come in and do? He nudges Christ. He goes, dude, we should go into business. We can make a ton of money. And so that's us. There's a reason that he was at the end of the story. I haven't gotten there and Chosen yet. But if you know the gospel, you know about him. You may not. But he's the one that actually Christ spoke to last before he ascended into heaven. He was also the one that became the rock. And that's literally what Peter means. He became the rock that Christ was going to build the new church on. And so it's as a driven and as a Christian, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. We're about 1 out of 12 people in this world. And so there's some parallels here that are kind of weird and spooky, but the importance of that, meaning that we see through the narrative, we see through the falsehoods that Christ was speaking against. And watching Chosen, and the producers of Chosen were having a hard time keeping the show going because the big networks are canceling them, because Christ was an adversary. He was not nice. He was speaking the truth. And if you're driven and you understand that a lot of times it's best to keep your mouth shut. And why? Because you attack the truth tellers. And I have gotten myself in multiple times of trouble telling the truth that people don't necessarily want to see or can see. And so they shoot the messenger. And it's like, I'm just like, I can't believe you guys don't see this the way I do. And so if you're feeling like that, or you've had that experience, you're important in this world, really important in this world. And I encourage you to join my community and really come out, because we need people that can actually not necessarily see the truth, but smell when it is. And so Joe Rogan's out there talking this stuff, and the cancel culture, if you tell the truth, they're going to cancel you. And so most people can't even see the truth. So going back to Peter, a couple of qualities that he had: he was always opening his mouth when he shouldn't. He was full of pride. And that's something else drivens can really be, because we have so much shame on the inside. We want to be right, and the need to be right, and speaking up and voicing our opinion. This other deeper quality around that we really want to have each other's backs. Navy SEALs are a great example of that. But if you're driven like I am, the greatest desire for all of us is that somebody really has our back. As hunters, the hunter-farmer theory I rely upon a lot, but as hunters, we had to have each other's backs. But as society got bigger and the herding animals, when something scary happens in the herd, they scatter. When something happens to a wolf pack, a bear attacks a wolf, what do all the other wolves do? They come and got your back. So here it is at the Last Supper, Peter's sitting there, and Christ starts talking about Judas. One of you is going to betray me. What did Peter do? I will never betray you. I always joke, it's kind of crass, but Christ looked at him and goes, yeah, you little, yes, you will. You will deny me thrice. You will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows, in one of the Gospels. And Peter obviously heard that. They came and take Christ the next morning. And as they were taking Christ, what did Peter do? He jumped up and grabbed some dude's sword, cuts the guy's ear off. You'll never take my... Christ picked up the ear, put it back on, and literally looked Peter right in the face and said, get behind me, Satan, meaning that he didn't see the real big picture. And so we can, as drivens, we can get locked into our truth, and we're prideful and fight for it. We can really screw some things up. So what happened later that afternoon? They're taking Christ in. He's in shackles, and Peter's hiding in the back, looking, watching Christ get taken. Some little girl comes up to him and goes, aren't you with him? And he goes, nope, walking away. And as he's walking away, a guy comes up to him and says, yeah, you got a different accent, not me. And just as the little girl next to him looks up and goes, yeah, you are with him. And he goes, nah. And just as he went, nah, a rooster crowed. And in that moment, Christ turned and looked him dead in the eyes, and looked Peter dead in the eyes. And as the Bible says, it broke him. And that's a fundamental key part of really drivens, is that until our pride is broken, until we really understand that our soul, our intention, what we really want to be in this world, will always fall short because of what our body. How many times is it driven? If you said, yes, I'm in, I'm going to go. But then it's like, oh, I can't. This desire to actually be something that we really can't be is part of our. But until that realization is broken and we reach this point of humility, teachability, and in that teachability is where drivens really, we can start to harness these gifts that we have. But as you experience your brokenness, it's really an opportunity to, another couple videos that I make about the mind, body, and the soul, really understand the functioning of our soul, that we're making promises from up here that our flesh can't keep. And so we have to learn how to work these things together. But most importantly, if you're driven and you've always felt like you're out of this herd, you always felt like there's something missing or wrong with you, you're different. You're not broken. And if you're seeing this for the video for the first time and you don't really understand what it means to be driven, please check out my other stuff. Go to iamdriven.com and am I driven at the link on here. It'll send into my stuff and help you take an assessment. It's a real assessment, meaning that I got imposter syndrome too. So I'm really scared of being called bullshit. It's a real assessment. I put it out to a national norming agency. It's a psychological eval, really exploring the qualities of being driven, the 10 different qualities, and it gives you a real feedback. Most importantly, it gives you the opportunity to find other people like yourself so you're not alone in this world. So bunch of videos to watch after this. And if this is the first time you've heard this stuff, welcome home.